Hey, it's Dave Isaacs with you, and today's lesson is on harmonizing a melody and coming up with instrumental arrangements. In other words, taking a tune that you know you can find the notes for on the guitar and finding the chords to go with it, working out an arrangement, a setting for that tune. So I'm going to work with the old classic song, Will a Circle Be Unbroken? It's really one of the original country songs, and the version that I have in my head is probably the one that you know, more or less coming from the Carter family back in the 20s. And I believe, though, that the melody is public domain, so I'm just going to play the tune. But you know it. It goes like this. Familiar, right? So we're in the key of C, and what I want to do is I want to take a look at the notes of this melody and then use a little bit of theory knowledge and my ears to decide what should go with each set of notes. Now, there is obviously a right way, more or less, to do this because you probably know it with a particular chord progression. No reason why you couldn't come up with your own variation on it, but for our purposes, we're looking for a setting that sounds familiar to people. You're going to take a tune people know and play the chords around it. If it's a song you already know how to strum the chords for, okay, fine, you've got that information. But there's still the arrangement question. So, looking at the beginning of this, we are in the key of C. This first little figure pretty solidly lands on the note C, even if you don't know you're in the key of C. If I asked you, do you find this to be a complete musical statement? Meaning, does something have to follow this? I mean, you would expect something to, but it doesn't have to. Not in the way that you would hear if I played this. You probably expect that B note to resolve, especially if I do this. Now, by playing that C scale, I just established C in your ear. So when I play this now, that absolutely sounds like our home note. And really, that is something important to be listening for. Knowing the scale is important, but your ear is also telling you what key you're in if you listen for which note sounds like a point of arrival. We've landed here, and the next cycle is about to start, but it clearly just finished something. Okay, so a G, an A, and a C. Now, of those three notes, G and C are in a C chord. A and C are in an F chord. If you don't know that off the top of your head, you might notice by simply strumming a C chord and saying, oh, look at that. And that sounds right. That feels pretty good, as opposed to that sounds good, but it doesn't sound like the beginning of the song. So we must be working from a C chord. Then the melody goes. Now that should be pretty clear that we don't need to hear a chord change. You just heard 3, 2, 1, mi, re, do, the third, the second, the root note of the chord, the key, the scale. You want a good way to recognize what key you're in? If you hear 3 blind mice, mice is the key you are in. 3, 2, 1. So we're clearly still over the same C chord. Now, my ear wants to hear a change here. The melody does this. C, D, C, A, G. Now, of all of those notes, C and A are in an F chord. D and G are in a G chord. Again, if you don't know it off the top of your head, you can see it. You play the F chord and notice, oh, A and C. You play the G chord and notice G and D. To do this, you have to be looking at individual notes within the chord, but this is a good habit to start developing. All of this will make so much more sense when you start to see chords as collections of notes. So you would just try the F chord and the G chord. So. That sounds good. Not so much. Sounds like we need to go back to C. The note is a G, but G belongs to the C chord. Again, if you've been looking at the individual notes, you would have noticed that. So, now all I'm doing with this hand right now is picking across certain notes of the chord. I am not hitting every string of the C chord or the F chord. I'm playing from the low strings, whatever the lowest note of the chord is, to the highest note that I want to bring out, which is going to be the melody. So, if I strummed the whole C chord, if I didn't stop at the second string, you wouldn't hear the tune. It creates a different melody note. So, and then, same thing. I'm going to use my pinky to hit this D, and then F, pinky again, middle finger's right there, 2, 3, start again. Now this time, the melody is... Now does that sound like a new chord? It doesn't have to be. We've already established that E and G are in the C chord. So we don't have to. My ear does want to hear a change. It's an A minor 7 chord. Now, if we've established we're in the key of C, A minor is the 6 minor. It's a very, very commonly used chord. It's the most commonly used minor chord. So if you want to hear a shift into minor, that might be the first thing you try. And it just so happens that the E note is the 5th of the A minor chord, so it's in the chord. The G in the melody here is not in an A minor triad, but it creates an A minor 7th. And conveniently enough, I can then pick up my ring finger off the A minor chord, and then that reinforces that sense of 7th because we have an open G to double the 7th we added. Sounds like we needed to go back home, right? Adding a pinky to the high E string, G, another G in the C chord. Sorry. Well, there's a triad, G, E, C. If you didn't know that the pinky on the first string just doubles the open G, you now have a new version of a C chord, which is actually very useful. So, that feels like we need to go home. Now we have a D, which is definitely not going with the C. Doesn't sound right with F, and it's not in the F chord anyway. G chord, it works. But again, notice how I'm fingering this. I've got ring and pinky. Ring finger getting the 6th string. Pinky getting the 2nd, the 3rd fret. You could do this too. But if you play the high E string, we lose the melody. Clearly we need to go home there. So I'm doing just the simple strum through. Not very complicated, but hopefully you saw the process, and if you don't know the notes that make up each chord quite well enough to be able to follow all of that, watch this a couple of times and just ask yourself, when you play a C chord, an F chord, a G chord, an A minor chord, what fingers are down, where are they at least, and what note is it if you can figure that out? Because even if you're looking at a tab and you say first fret of the second string, visually it's not hard to recognize that that is part of a C chord, that that is part of an A minor chord, that that is part of an F chord. This is how you get to know what chords go easily with what notes. And it's the beginning of building up a real understanding of harmony. Now, I think there's a number of ways, well, not just I think, there's a number of ways we could build up arrangements off this foundation that I just played. I don't really want to go there yet because I'd like to leave it open. What I'd like you to try to do is to look at the tab, which is simply the melody, with the chord names over it that I chose, and see what you can come up with. Maybe play it just slow like I did. Maybe try to find a way to get some rhythm to it. I like the idea of your being able to use this as an exercise to explore a little bit what you can do with putting chords and melody together. As always, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy this. Hope you get a lot out of it. I think you certainly can. I'm Dave Isaacs, and I'll see you next time.